In this video, basically what I want to do is I want to do a kind of a more kind of an in-depth analysis of another article in the movement of logical positivism. This one is kind of in the later period of it. This article is by A.J. Ayer, Alfred Jules Ayer, which is called Phenomenalism. It was published in 1947. I have some videos on logical positivism, so if you don't kind of have a background on what this whole thing is, either go somewhere else online to figure out what this is, or I have also videos about this, like many of them actually. So first of all, I'd like to say that this whole thing it's pretty long, I would say. But I'm not going to go through every single part of it. I just want to go through a few things that I find to be important to kind of mark his article as part of the trend of logical positivism. So it's called phenomenalism, first off, and what this is a theory of perception that physical objects are logical constructions out of sense data. So first of all, what are sense data? Now this is a big thing. Bertrand Russell talked about it. G.E. Moore talked about it. Foundationalists in the earlier, like the 1932, the 34 era, that part of logical positivism, people like Rudolf Carnap and Moritz Schlick tried to make sense data the ultimate foundation of scientific knowledge. So, what is sense data? I have a certain blue patch. The patch is Moore's word. I have a certain patch of a certain size, color, and shape. Blue patch, right there, or I feel smoothness, or any kind of sensory info, I guess. So first off, we have languages of sense data. We have a language of sense data. We have a language of things, language of physical objects, languages of mathematics and geometry, languages of physicalism, languages of and higher levels of science. So that's how basically what this whole thing does is we kind of go down to talking about things as sense data. So I don't think of this as a whiteboard and a blue wall. I think about blue patches, white patches, darker blue patches, black patch, smoothness. That's the language. But then I can try to break all the talk about things into talk about sensory info, smoothness, blueness, whiteness, etc. So, phenomenalism is kind of a thing that Ayer introduced, that kind of Ayer brings into the whole positivism thing. He of course wasn't the first to talk about phenomenalism, but this is kind of like a thing he uses to kind of explain how we break down our talk of things into talk of this stuff, sense data. So phenomenalism is the theory of perception that physical objects are logical constructions out of sense data. So it's kind of like we don't think about physical objects as like anything other than this. So we kind of try to break talk of physical objects down to talk of these. So that's basically what this whole term means. And what this is, the big whole part of this thing, which I find to be most important for this article, is this right here, the catch value translation, which I will get to. So the visual sense field. So what that is it's the whole of what everyone sees. Visual sense data is the constituent of the visual sense field. So the whole of what everyone sees constitutes the visual sense field. So, and we can break down everything that we see into talk of these. So He talks a lot about the act-object analysis of sensation. Think about things as objects of knowledge, or think about things as objects of acquaintance. A being aware of X, object X. He isn't really kind of into. He doesn't really agree with that totally. He kind of wants to get out of that. He wants to kind of move towards something more like this, of course. So again, this is very long, and it's something that you should read to kind of get, you should. First of all, I think that details, the details of certain articles are very, very important, but I can't really go over every single one of them here. So another big thing he says is that if we can figure out, if we can break down certain physical objects into sense data, so we can get some sense data, that means that more are obtainable. So prior to Ayer, so I'd like to say that 1947 was kind of in the later period of logical positivism, where in the 30s, what was going on was kind of more of a thing about how we can. Well, first of all, we have 1928, I think, was Rudolf Carnap's Aufbau, the logical construction, or no, it's called something called the logical construction of the world, or something like that. The Aufbau, what Carnap was doing there was trying to create an indubitable, translatable link between talk of things and talks of sense data. So, in that way, he was trying to make sense data the ultimate foundation of scientific knowledge. So, also Carnap, his article, the Elimination of Metaphysics through the Logical Analysis of Language, was another one. His later article in 1950, Empiricism, Semantics, and Ontology, was kind of in this period, they were sort of kind of giving up on that infallibilistic, that infallible, unshakable link between knowledge and reality, because Schlick and Carnap in the 30s, they were kind of they're thinking, well, we can have an indubitable, unshakable link between knowledge and reality. But Neurath came along, and there were coherentists like Neurath, and the foundationalists kind of ran into difficulties with this. To understand those difficulties would be to read lots of different articles between 1928 and 1950 of the logical positivist period. So, what is meant by the cash value translation? So, like I said before, the translation, what is meant by translation is to break down our physical objects into sense data. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what phenomenalism is about. That way we can have ultimate justification and meaning and truth in our science. So, that's the whole thing. But in this period of time, the late 40s, the whole movement was kind of not as strong as it was in the 30s, and the whole thing was the Aufbau project of Carnap, Rudolf Carnap. I have some videos on him. Well, I have one video on him actually, on his article, the Elimination of Metaphysics. Carnap and Schlick, the whole thing is they wanted to have a very close translation to where we can quickly and immediately break down physical objects into sense data. So this cash value translation is kind of a less than infallible, less than certain, less than indubitable translation between sense data and physical objects. So we can get a cash value translation. We can get the cash value of physical objects by stating them in terms of sense data. So the whole reason why it's cash value and not, not in the Aufbau form is that the whole program was to get every single bit, every single description of physical objects, every single bit of physical objects broken down into sense data. That's what this was. That's what this was. That's what this was about, the Aufbau. But in this period of time, Ayer was still in the whole foundationalist thing, and still in this whole translation thing. But this is kind of a less than infallible, less than certain kind of version of it because of the difficulties prior to this year. So, also what he says is the setting, the orientation of things around any given sense data is necessary for these translations. So we can either have this, or we can have the Iron Curtain theory of perception, which is that we can't get at the sense data of any given physical object. We can't get at those. We can't get at the sense data of any given physical object. So he says no. We can still get at it somewhat, but not in the unshakable, indubitable way of Carnap, in the Aufbau, and even in the 30s of Schlick and Carnap. So that's the whole thing of this article. There's many different, specific issues as to these translations. There's the problem of distant places, problem of causation, problem of past times. Actually, it says the setting of sense data is not necessary because it causes confusion. Excuse me, because I was reading something prior to this that was contrary. So excuse me. That's the only thing that I've messed up here. All right. Excuse me there. Yeah, it's probably not a good idea to read things in this period back to back, because I was kind of reading other things in the 30s prior to doing this, to writing all this down here. That's probably why I got that mixed up here. So sorry. So we have lots of different issues of this stuff, of these cash value translations, of which I have chosen not to include here because I think those are better if one reads those on his own accord, and I don't think it's the reason I wanted to do this is to kind of mark this period in this article in the movement of logical positivism. So I wanted to mark this there and kind of recognize the downfall in Carnap's Empiricism, Semantics, and Ontology in 51. That's kind of also a part of this. And Quine and Sellers, following all this, they're still kind of logical. They're still kind of positivists, but they don't really buy this stuff anymore. Now, one thing to also keep in mind that is very important to know about the whole positivist period is that they all buy into the fact that verification conditions are the same as truth conditions, the same as meaning conditions are the same as justification. So another article by Ayer to read would be which I don't think I need to do here because it's short and sweet. But that's the whole. This is the whole schema, or the whole, I guess, mantra, if you will, that the positivists buy into. That is very important to know. That the conditions under which a statement is verified is the same as the conditions under which a statement is true, has meaning, and justified. So, if you think I've messed something up, or if you think I've left something out, please comment below. I'd love to discuss with you. Also, if you have a question, I would also love to discuss with you. Thank you.